All right, good morning everyone. We're back here to continue working on our slab boxes. So I worked on mine since you last saw me, and I took the ruler and I continued scraping the sides on both of the boxes. After I got them scraped to where you couldn't see the seams anymore, to where I felt like they were nice and smooth and the surface was flush, then I went ahead and I took a sponge and just went back and forth, sponging away, rounding off the edges, smoothing everything out, trying to make it as perfect as I could. Then what I did is I put them in my bags and then just left the bags puffed open a little bit so they've got some air, and let them just dry a tad bit more. So now they're perfect for cutting open. Now one other thing I did do as well, if you can notice here on the side of the box, there's a little cut mark here. All I did was insert the X-Acto knife in and pull it out. And the reason I did that is, as these dry and shrink, there's air trapped inside, so it compresses the air. And if you don't give it a place to go, in other words, escape from the box, your top sometimes will start to bow or curve a little bit because it's compressed in there. Sometimes if you don't have a good join and it dries too much, it'll even create a split where you've joined it so that air can get out. So what I do is I just basically slide the knife in, pull it out, and it lets the air escape, and that way you don't have that problem. So at this point, I'm going to start with a heart-shaped box. As you can see, both sides, everywhere, it's smoothed out. So what I'm going to do is cut it open. And I can't remember if this is the actual top, the last piece I put in, or if I got flipped over and this might be the bottom. It doesn't matter either way, but when we cut it open, we'll be able to tell which one doesn't have the coils in the seams, and that's when we'll go back and we'll do that. Same thing with the rectangle box. So to cut these, we're going to use the X-Acto knife. I think you guys already know, but the angled side is the cutting side. That's supposed to be the sharper side. Some of our tools are worn down, but they're fine for cutting clay. So all you're going to do is insert the knife and just put it fully in. And then what you're going to do is go ahead and drag it. Try not to saw with your cuts, because then you'll get rough, jagged cuts or edges. We want to just, excuse me, put the knife in and then just drag it. And that'll give us a nice, even cut. Now when we do drag it, we want to put a slight little curve in it. No big loop-de-loos or a lot of dips, just some gentle flowing curves. That curve, because of the change in it, it's going to actually help hold our lid on so the lid doesn't slide off. And I would try and keep your cut to the upper third of the box. Don't go too high because you'll cut into the area that you joined. Drop down maybe about 3/4 of an inch to start and keep it around that area. That way you still have plenty of space in the bottom of your box if you want to use it to store things. So I'm just going to go ahead and start here. I'm going to drag the knife, and when you come to the tips, just carefully kind of turn your box and turn your knife with it. And then, like I say, just kind of a gentle flowing curve. Doesn't have to be anything crazy with a lot of loops or dips, but that little bit of curve or offset is enough that that's what's going to help to hold your lid on, rather than just a straight cut. And just keep your eye on where you started so that hopefully you can come back pretty close and match up right where you began. Okay? Then you should be able to go ahead and lift your lid off. It might stick a little bit. You might have some sections. Looks like I have a back section over here. There we go. Where it might be a little bit stickier. So as it turns out, I did flip it over. This was the bottom. It already has the coil in the seam. So let me just set this aside. And this is the inside. And so I've got to go back and just smooth this out, and then I'll go ahead and put a coil in the seam there. So I will go ahead and do that and then I'll come back and I'll show you the final one when it's all completely finished. Okay? All right, so we've cut open the heart-shaped box, and now we're going to go ahead and cut open the rectangle box. After we cut them open, then we'll go put those coils in the seams where we join the last piece to close up the boxes. So just like the heart-shaped box, you're going to use the X-Acto knife. You're going to go ahead and insert the knife, and you can see here I've got a little hole or a little slice where I poked into it the other day so that the air would be able to escape, so that the top and the bottom would stay flat and not kind of like bow out because of the air being compressed inside. So I'm just going to put my knife in the same place that I had made that little insertion the other day. So now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and cut open the lid. I'm going to drag the knife. As I drag it, I'm going to put some gentle curves in it, not anything extreme, and that's going to be what helps to hold our lid on. Try not to saw with it. We don't want any rough, jagged saw-like cuts. Don't put any harsh angles. Make them gentle curves, okay? Especially don't make what I call shark teeth. If you think of little triangle shark teeth, because what happens is if you make shark teeth and you go to put that together, when that fires, the clay is going to shrink, and as it shrinks, it's going to clamp down, and every one of those little points, it's going to be tight so that your lid doesn't want to come off. And if you do get it to come off, then you've got to glaze it. Well, when we glaze it, we have to clean the glaze out of every one of those little tips or points. Otherwise, if there's any glaze residue there, as we fire it the second time in the glaze fire, it will shrink even more, and if there's any glaze residue, it's going to stick, and when you try to get your lid off, it's going to be extremely hard, and you'll probably end up breaking or chipping your project. So just nice, gentle curves, okay? So we're just going to drag this along. Put a couple nice little smooth curves in it. Be careful not to go too high. You don't want to cut into where you joined your top piece. And then just make sure you're keeping an eye and you're coming back around to where you just started. Go ahead and take the knife out, and your lid should come right off. So I'll show you this piece up close. This is the last piece that we joined together, and you can see where the slip oozed out. You can see that it's not smooth and it doesn't have a coil in the seam. So what I'll do next is I will go back and put a coil in all the seams all the way around, smooth all this out. After I do that, then I will go ahead and sponge these edges and just smooth them off and round them off, because sometimes as you put the knife in, it's going to displace a little bit of the clay and give you kind of like a little overhang or a lip there. So what we'll do right now is just set this part aside, and we'll go ahead and we'll put a coil in the seam on this. Pretty simple. Again, just taking some nice soft clay, rolling out a worm of clay, about 1/8 of an inch in thickness, nothing extreme. Just like when we assembled the rest of the box. And we're just going to go ahead and tack that in. Okay, so we've got that coil blended in, sponged and smoothed out, trying to make it look as perfect as we can. So now what I want to do is just lightly sponge all these edges, just to take that little ridge or that little overhang away from cutting it out. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that. And then the rest is pretty much cleanup work. And I'll do the same thing to the heart-shaped box that I just did to this one on the last piece. And then we'll get them all cleaned up. So, go ahead and hold this one up so you can kind of take a good look at it, see down inside, really work to sponge and smooth that out to clean off these edges. And then we've got our top done here also. So after you sponge them, because there's still moisture in the clay, what you'll find is if you put your lid on right away, because the moisture is there, it's going to cause it to stick. So what you may want to do is give yourself a couple of minutes to let that water evaporate. And then you can go ahead and you can put your lid back on. Now, if it's the end of the period or you don't want to wait, what you could always do is take a paper towel, you can lay it there, and then you can go ahead and you can set your lid on. And let's see, I might have it turned the wrong way. There we go. So you can set it on that way if you need to. But just to get a better look to see how it's fitting and so forth, once the clay is somewhat dry, after sponging it, you can take a look and see how it fits. Now, as I said, sometimes if you sponge a little extra in places, or depending on the way you cut it, you might see like a little bit more of a gap there. That's perfectly okay. But just try not to go crazy on your cutting, and on your sponging, and hopefully you don't have too much of that happening. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and end the video so that I can get going with the start of class here. But I'm going to let you know that I will do exactly the same thing on the heart-shaped box that I just did on this one. I'm going to put the coils in the seams. I'm going to smooth it out. I'm going to sponge it. I'm going to sponge my edges where I made my cuts. And then at that point, my basic box is done. The rest is all decoration. If you want to put a handle on it, if you want to create designs, if you want to take cookie cutters and cut out like, I don't know, little heart shapes, little designs, and you want to crosshatch and slip on the outside. If you want to take a loop carving tool or a wooden tool and you want to just shave or carve into the clay to create designs, you can do that. Or if you want to leave it plain, you can leave it plain. Just remember my thoughts on leaving things simple and plain is if you leave them simple and plain, your imperfections are more easily seen. So really make sure you're taking the time to sponge, to smooth, to clean everything up so that if you leave it simple, it looks as perfect as you can make it. All right, I think that's pretty much it. If I come up with any more ideas in terms of decorating or things that I think you should know, then I'll add one more little video. Okay, have a great day.